Hey Lightweights, and welcome back to some more lore lessons with Lightweight, where we dive into the lore of God of War 2018 in preparation for God of War Ragnarok. Our very first video of the series was on Mimir, which you can catch posted from yesterday, and I'll also link it. I don't know which side it pops up on, but I'll do a card on one of these sides. You could click that as well if you missed that one. Today we are going to be talking about the Vanir-Aesir War, how Mimir helped restore peace or cultivate peace with that, and that will be it. So this video is probably going to be a little bit shorter, and then from there we will get into talking about Freya, so kind of setting up for Freya and Odin's relationship in this video. All right, clearing my throat, getting ready for teacher Lightweight. Oh, and again, I'm still reading from Lore and Legends, which is created by Sony and Rick Barba. You can find this on Amazon. That's where I got mine. And I will put the title and the information on the screen and in the description below if you would like to get your own copy. This is not sponsored in any way. I just really love this book, and I'm really excited for God of War Ragnarok, and I want to learn the lore. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that bell button when you do, so that you know when I post future videos. All right, here we go. The Vanir-Aesir War. The two northern tribes of gods, Aesir and Vanir, have been fighting for so many years that everyone calls it the Long War. Mother told me how it all started. Tensions had long smoldered between the tribes. Some say since time itself began. So Freyr, a beloved leader of the Vanir, traveled to Asgard at Odin's invitation. He wanted to give the Aesir a great gift to keep the peace, so he taught them how to grow crops using cider magic. His spells were so good the harvest could feed all of Asgard. But Mother always said that really powerful magic always has a downside. The Aesir couldn't control the cider enchantment properly, and the crops became poisoned. Angry and drunk on mead, they blamed Freyr, tossing him into a pile of dead crops, and set it on fire. The flames hurt a lot, but Freyr knew how to survive a fire. He awoke hours later to find himself alone in Odin's great hall. Thinking he was dead, the cruel Aesir were probably off celebrating somewhere, so Freyr crawled from the still-burning coals and snuck out of Asgard. When Freyr got back to Vanaheim and told his story, his fellow Vanir gods were furious. They gathered in a seaside longhouse, I'm not going to pronounce this right, in Noatun? I'll have to look that up, and decided to seek revenge against the barbaric Aesir. And so the War of Gods began. The Aesir, Odin, Thor, Honir, Hoder, Ve, Vili, and all of the rest, fought mercilessly. Side note, I apologize for my mispronunciations. I'm doing the best I can, but like I said, I know nothing about this lore, so some of these are new to me. Fought mercilessly. They attacked with weapons and brute force, because physical combat was the only way they knew how to fight. But the Vanir fought back with magic. Led by Freyr's sister, Freya, and their father, Njord, the Vanir used enchantments to repel the Asgardians again and again. Freya used her cider skills to confuse the Aesir warriors into attacking each other. Then Njord summoned angry, vicious winds that whipped across the sea, blowing the Aesir boats all over the place. Neither side could get a clear advantage, so the fighting continued for centuries. Odin gathered vast armies and marched them again and again into Vanaheim. Every time, Vanir gods casting cider spells would wipe out Odin's soldiers. With so much terrible damage done to both sides, the warring gods found themselves stuck in a stalemate. All right, so now we actually have the lore marker from the game. They distinguish those with the actual text that you can find in the lore markers. So I'm going to read that. This is an actual lore marker that we found in 2018's God of War. The Long, Cruel War, it's called. Here fell Nerthus of the Vanir, slain by Magni and Modi, sons of Thor. The Jotnar bear witness to the cruelty of this long war. Neither Aesir nor Vanir may triumph, it is foreseen, but what may be left of Midgard before they lay down arms? So that was actually from the game itself. All right, so now let's tie it back into Mimir, who we learned some background on last video, and see how he helped to try to create peace between these two groups of gods. So Mimir's peace plan. When Father and I brought Mimir's severed head to Freya, she used her amazing witch magic to bring it back to life. But the first thing she did when Mimir woke was spit in his face. Later, on one of our boat trips, I asked Mimir why she did that. His answer was so interesting that I wrote down everything he said. Well, she blames me in large measure for her present circumstances, and not totally without reason. It all goes back to the long war between the Aesir and the Vanir. Prior to that, wars for the Aesir were easily won, but the Vanir had proved to be their equal and exacted devastating damage. Both sides suffered tremendous losses, and for many of us, quite frankly, war was simply no fun anymore, but a rather senseless waste of precious life. Mimir said he realized that the only way out was a brokered peace based on compromise, and because both sides considered him a clever negotiator, they selected him as sole arbiter. I almost said arbitrator. Arbiter. The deal he proposed was pretty crazy, I must say. Freya, high goddess of the Vanir, would marry Odin, king of the Aesir. Oh, it took some convincing, said Mimir. Freya was not at all pleased, believe me. But ultimately, she realized it was a worthwhile sacrifice to protect her people, a selfless act of love. And Odin, of course, true to his randy Aesir impulses, was mesmerized by Freya's fertile beauty. So Mimir was able to convince Odin to marry Freya, even though she was probably his deadliest enemy. I suppose it didn't hurt that she was a master of Vanir magics, and that was something he already wanted to learn. All right, so we're gonna stop there. Next time we'll get into Odin and Freya's relationship, talk a little bit more about Mimir, and then also talk about Baldur and Freya with the Valkyries. So I'm really excited to get into Freya's stuff because I loved her character in the 2018 games. Sorry, I put in my bookmark so I don't lose my spot. So I'm really excited to learn more about her lore, but it is interesting how Odin really, his main goal is to just learn as much as he possibly can, no matter what he has to do that. Obviously, we heard last time that he killed himself and was dead for a couple of days in order to learn the secrets to the afterlife. He's willing to marry someone, obviously they said because of her looks, but also because he wanted to learn her magic. So it's not about peace for him. It's not about trying to do what's best for his people. It's all about making sure he knows everything he can possibly know. And if I recall from the lore markers and Mimir stories in the game, I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more of that in these little lore segments as we continue reading. And I bet that's going to come into play with this next game as well. So pop out here if you don't want to talk about anything for Ragnarok, because I am going to touch a little bit on my thoughts for Ragnarok at this point. So if you don't want any conversation about Ragnarok based off of trailers or anything like that, this is your time to step out. So make sure you do that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So in the trailers for God of War Ragnarok, obviously we know that Thor is there. We see that scene with Kratos and Thor throwing their weapons at each other and getting into a battle there. And also there's that voiceover in, I think it was the third trailer, maybe? I don't know, one of like the last one that was released. You hear voiceover that I'm almost positive is Odin, so that makes me think that he is going to be integral in this Ragnarok as well, which makes sense because my basic understanding of the lore of Ragnarok is that Odin really feared that, which is why he was so intent on gaining as much knowledge as he possibly can. Correct me if I'm wrong, because like I have said multiple times, I don't know much about lore, especially with the Norse stuff, which is why we're doing these. So if you know more about that than I do, please let me know in the comments below. But it's my understanding that he wanted all this knowledge just partly to be the most powerful, but also because he was so afraid of Ragnarok. So I'll be really curious to see how that knowledge comes into play, or that wanting of knowledge comes into play with Ragnarok. And if that voiceover is really Odin that we hear in those trailers. I think that's everything. Yeah, I think that's everything. So next time, like I said, we'll get into talking about Freya and the Valkyries and Baldur, and Freya and Odin together. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about Mimir, and then we're pretty much done, I think, with the main Mimir segments. Not that he won't be in there more, but I think we're pretty much past the main parts about Mimir specifically. So I'm excited. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know this one was much shorter. If you did, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell button when you do so that you know when I post future lore videos. I'll be posting a new one every day in preparation for Ragnarok. And after we get through all the lore markers and a couple of the Jotnar shrine markers, I am also going to go into a segment on Fimbulwinter. So make sure you subscribe because you don't want to miss any of that. Fimbulwinter will be very important in-between information leading up to Ragnarok. So I think that segment in the book on Fimbulwinter will be between the events of the 2018 game and Ragnarok. So I think that will be really important for us to read. So I'm going to end the series with that. All right, but anyways, just subscribe, hit that bell button. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day.